Hey, dude, this dog like stinks, man. Okay, groomer, do something about it, man.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hey, all you pet stylists. You found the GroomPod. Welcome to our virtual salon. My name is Susie, and I'm your host. I'm a mobile groomer from Seattle, Washington, and anyone who knows me will tell you I love to talk, especially about my job. One of my favorite people to talk to is my friend and mentor and co-star of the show, Miss Barbara Bird.
Hello, groomers. Wait a minute.
Hey, that's not Barbara Bird, is it? It's Dave Campanella. Welcome to episode 377 of the GroomPod, recorded on June 18th, 2023 in Snohomish, Washington, and somewhere in Kentucky. This podcast is brought to you by our kind sponsors, Best Shot, Show Season, Evolution Shears, Groomore, and Stasco. And if you'd like to support your podcasters, you can go to our website, thegroompod.com, and click on the donation button for a one-time donation, or join us on Patreon. This week on the GroomPod, we're going to chat with Dave Campanella. If you haven't found Groomore, you're missing out. Groomore is an all-in-one software solution for your grooming business. Whether you are a solo mobile groomer or manage several shops, Groomore has everything you need. 24-hour online booking and forms, routing, credit card processing, reminders, Google Calendar and QuickBooks integration, and so much more. And the best customer service anywhere. Shop, mobile, or house call, Groomore has you covered. And they're giving us a free month. Just enter GroomPod22 in the coupon code. So Dave is here with us this week because Barbara is doing her coat damage webinar with PositiveEd.com. So thanks for being here, Dave. We really appreciate it.
Well, it's an honor to fill in and such important shoes to fill. So I'm truly honored to be here. I'll try to do Barbara some justice.
Excellent. Well, we just are happy that you're here with us and we get to pick your brain, which is always fun. So I have some exciting news for everybody involved with the podcast, and that is that Barbara's next webinar will be produced by the GroomPod, and we'll be doing it through our own website, and we'll have more information on that, but I believe it's going to be all about curly coats, which is exciting and interesting, and Barbara loves the subject, so it should be a good webinar. That'll be coming up. And I did nothing but de-shedding dogs for the past 2 weeks. Since I got home from South Carolina, I have been doing Pomskis and Shepherds and Goldens and tons of de-shedding. And that's why we're going to talk about it this week with Dave. But before we go there, I want to talk about a guy that we both knew who had a really big influence in my early grooming careers, and that's John Stasco.
Sure.
You guys at Best Shot are the legacy holders for the Stasco product line. And I really do love the product line, and especially the new protein conditioner and the protein spray. I like it even better than the original. I feel a little blasphemous saying that. It is a fantastic mix. So how did you guys end up with that?
Well, it was something we were talking about with John. Actually, it goes back to before he passed. And, was kind of on the fence with it. I had come right out to him and I said, people love your all breed. They love your products. They really love the smell of your oatmeal products. Is there any way we could expand that? Because, John was the industry's first guru, but you're going back 30 years. The fragrance, kind of like peppermint, not everybody digs it, but everybody seemed to really like the scent. So we were talking about expanding his line, and he was open to it. And we started talking, and then without getting too much of a downer, anybody who's kind of follows me a little bit knows that I had about a 13-month span of my life where I was plagued with some gastrointestinal surgeries and things. When I was going through that, John, I have to digress because I just love talking about John. He was just such a sweet, lovable, sincere guy, a very devout believer. And he was like, "You're going into surgery?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "What's the date?" And I told him, and he says, "Well, I'll be praying for you." And I'm like, "Well, wow, thank you, John." And the day before I went home, I found out that John had passed. And here that stinker, always putting others ahead of himself, never let on he had stage 4 cancer.
Wow, he was praying for you, and we should have been praying for him.
Yeah. And that was just John, because he just didn't want the attention. And of course, when he passed, he didn't want any of the information being released until after his funeral. So his closest friends, Joey Villani and a couple other folks, agreed that not going to announce him passing until, he just didn't want the fuss. It's very selfless, always thinking of others. But to the point of the product, John was all about keeping things simple. And, we didn't just take products and slap a John Stasko label on it. He was actually very involved in a line when he was developing it. And originally it was us and someone else that was kind of joining together. He had 2 companies manufacturing. And as things progressed, we had an opportunity to do it all for him. And that really worked out well. His point was a line where people could just keep it simple, doing more with less, because he was all about function and efficiency. And he was not the type of person that wanted 20 different, 30 different products. It was kind of neat. Once a good year kind of settled, we decided to introduce the protein conditioner and the protein conditioner spray to go along with the oatmeal shampoo that he had. And another little note was in the marketing of Stasko products. Early on, it was like, John, do you have any photos of yourself or anything? We'd like to get the word out. And he was like, well, you've got photos, and he always referred to this one photo that was like 20 years earlier of him. And I'm like, okay, well, if that's all I got to work with. So we started doing this little campaign of John Stasko, the most influential man in the grooming industry, kind of a knockoff of the Dos Equis guy, the most interesting man.
Right.
And when we did that, the first draft I sent to him, I get this phone call. And some people may have seen the ad of John in a dinner jacket sitting at a couch and the products laying out before him. It mirrored a Dos Equis ad. And the first draft, I remember his voice. He was in horror. He goes, I look so old, because I kind of grayed his hair a little bit. And John was very conscious of how he looked. Anytime you saw John, he was always dressed to the T. And it was important how he portrayed himself, to the industry. He wanted to be well-groomed and look professional. And I had printed these postcards up. And I basically ate several $100s worth of postcards. And we redid the postcard to where he and Pat, his significant other, she approved. They wanted to make sure he looked good and looked like John. But then we came out with another ad where it was, what was the next one we did? It looked like an Egyptian, Raiders of the Lost Ark thing. And I was trying to convey to him that people want to know who you are. They want to know about your product. They got to discover who you are. And if you think of like Chef Boyardee and Newman's Own, and all these brands, there's a picture of the person. So I was working on these different ones. And then I came out with Pirate Jack, it looked like, there's an ad and we're going to be running it again. It looks like Pirates of the Caribbean, but instead of a bunch of fish heads and sharks, it's dogs.
I love it. That's my favorite.
And then I did one we called it Spaceman John, and he did not like that because on the background it showed the moon and there was an Aztec temple on the moon. He didn't like it, so I never ran it. But when he passed, I ran it one time. Groomer to Groomer, they let me run it for free because my thought was John was in the heavens, and plus that was my way of, if he really didn't like it, he would have had somebody strike me down dead.
Yes.
So he gave me a pass on that one. But it's just been a fun ad campaign, and the whole point is for people to discover it. And it's a very simple line. And any of your listeners, if they're just tired of too many products and they just want something reliable, something that gets it done, that was the spirit, doing more with less. He did have a lot of influence in what the products did and what the tweaking and the ingredients were. to this day, we hold true to those products. I hope that made sense. I know it was long-winded.
Oh, I loved every bit of it. It's interesting. I'm not a fan of the baby powder smell myself. I was so excited with the apple smell. It just fixed it for me. It's a mainstay. I use the conditioner every day. It's my favorite conditioner. I like it even better than the sentiment conditioners.
Sure.
It's the one I go to.
That's okay.
I learned a lot from him in his seminars, and so I love that we honor him quite often with talking about his stuff.
I have hours and hours of seminars he did that are so dated. I was hoping I could reproduce them and re-record them, but they reek from so many decades ago, they just wouldn't fly today. And to try to reproduce them would be next to impossible. But I'm rethinking. He had a booking system. Now everybody's using apps and computers, but I still think there's something to his old Stasco appointment system.
It was solid.
Yeah, and he had his CPR or safety. Actually, it was a safety first aid, kind of like a cheat sheet, and it had a big poster you could put on the door. Like if something happened in your shop, it's like, what do? You open up the door and you look at the poster and it would walk you through emergencies. And we're toying with how do we bring some of this stuff back, because many of his concepts and contributions were timeless. It's going to take some time, but I can foresee a day of people, maybe going to a seminar where somebody talks about Stasco principles, and you get to hear little snippets and quotes and some of the things that he was out there talking about 30 years ago, which more so today, I think, carry a lot of relevance and a lot of wisdom. He was, like I said, the industry's first guru. My goal is to somehow figure out a way to keep that legacy going. A percentage of the sales, of everything that's sold gets tithed to family members that he had designated, we want to keep it going for him. So it's a great cause. And even people who don't know him and discover his products like the products just, based on their own merit.
It's something like a voiceover on a PowerPoint. Like you run his voice and then you do PowerPoints, cut in some video of him with the dogs. That's what I envision for his stuff, but that would take hours of time. And I don't know that it would be financially viable.
Yeah, but we've got it. Well, there's a few things, like I said, the appointment book, and I think the safety poster, I think has merit, and those might be the first things we introduce, because I think they're a staple item with appeal that would appeal to a lot of people. So we're toying with it.
I think that's great, and I love to be a supporter. Okay, let's take a quick break. And you got through with not one sound effect. That's really rare. I didn't put in anything. I'm slipping. Did you know that Stasco has come out with a couple of new products? First, there is the Stasco Oatmeal Protein Conditioner. This conditioner provides exceptional body and manageability and super shiny finishes. And it has a wonderful apple scent that I love. Great in the recirculator, too. And they have a new matching protein conditioning spray, dematting, anti-static conditioning, and finishing all in one, just like the original Stasco spray, but with that delicious apple fragrance. Look for these new products at trade shows and your favorite distributors like Cascade Grooming Supplies. Ready, groomers? Here comes our first appointment. We all know that I'm firmly planted on the Best Shot bandwagon, but since we have you here, let's talk a little bit about shedding. It seems like a majority of my service calls are de-sheds. I got a lot of Goldens, a lot of Aussies, a lot of Labs, a lot of Shepherds, and a lot of Pomskis. Who in the world thought it would be a good idea to mix Huskies and Pomeranians? Because they're all as big as Huskies with really horrible Pomeranian type, the worst of the Pomeranian hair. You get the worst of it. It's not the best of both worlds. It's the worst of both worlds in these guys. Anyway, I digress. I really enjoy doing them. I think de-shedding is a good way to make money, and it's kind of fun to just zone out and blow that hair around, and when you're done, you see the results on the floor. You see the hair in the tub, you see the hair on the ground, and it's very gratifying for me. De-shedding has always been kind of a focus for Best Shot also. I know that because I use the products almost exclusively. I just wanted to talk a little bit about how Best Shot got into the shedding game.
Everything with me is a story. There's a story behind that. You know, when Best Shot first started, Bill Marshall was the founder. I've mentioned him in other podcasts. He was a ex-Marine and he was a barber. He had a couple salons, and he would get some product made to his specs. And when he sold his barber shops or hair salons, whatever you want to call them, he retired and got into showing Lhasa Apsos. And I should just say losses. And he had a kennel and a groom shop. And to me, that's not retirement. That's a full-time gig. But he noticed that, you know, the products out there at the time really didn't live up to snuff. It was all stuff that smelled like something from a Spencer gift store. The shampoos just weren't sophisticated. You know, they could get them clean, but that was about it. And he took his knowledge from the hair care industry and adapted the method for grooming dogs. And he came up with a system designed to save time. If you're from the hair care industry, you know about this thing called porosity, which has to do with the cuticle scales along the hair shaft and the way they behave, and how porosity is a measurement of the degree in which that they tend to lift and open. It varies on coat type and breed. And porosity also is a good measurement of how well hair retains its moisture. And in the hair care industry, it's all about keeping hair manageable. You're smoothing coat. And when people would buy Best Shot, he had a system. You did a shampoo, you followed up with a conditioner, and then you had a spray and leave-in that extended the manageability. Well, the first thing people saw was all this hair. See, humans aren't double coated or, you know, combination coated. You know.
We've just got guard hairs.
Right. You know, I mean, if you got hair coming out of you in the shower, it's because you're shaving your legs or you're putting hair all over you. Okay. But with dogs, you know, people were noticing, oh my God, look at all this hair, all this shedding undercoat. It was undercoat that's trapped in the hair, coming out in the tub, and how much more blew out. That was the first thing they noticed. And that's the value of knowing how to manage and manipulate the coat's porosity. It's canine cosmetology 101. Well, back then, this was like alchemy, witchcraft, or science. You know, people are like, oh, cow, look at all this. And right away, the product got pigeoned as an outstanding de-shedding product. You know, and here's looking back at this. How many are familiar with Jennifer Jacob Bishop, since she has a course she teaches called the 15 coat types?
And she's been on the podcast.
Yeah. First, I dismissed it. It's like, oh, geez, now we got 15. Oh, my God, how complicated we want to make it. Until I was mindful and I looked at it, and then I talked to her. And it's really broken down. And if you look at that, basically 80% ballpark of the breeds out there are shedding breeds. So if you think about it, if you're going to be in the grooming business, you're going to be in the de-shedding business. I hope I kind of opened up. I'll let you ask me more questions, but that's kind of the gist.
Perfect. Talking about shedding, the losses, they don't shed a lot. I mean, is there really such a thing as a dog that doesn't shed at all?
No, but here's the beauty, and I've said this before. Managing the coat, manageability, quick drying, adding shine. And by manageability, I'm talking about a coat that isn't static, that repels dirt, you know, that stays manageable for an extended period. When you smooth the cuticles, in other words, you close the lifted cuticles and keep them closed for an extended period of time, that's manageability. It's a domino effect. For a dog that's shedding, all that shedded undercoat's going to release because you don't have these lifted cuticles like the bars on a pine cone. You know, the barbs, you know, trapping like Velcro all that hair. When you smooth the coat, they're going to come out easier. It's going to release. On a Lhasa, if you have a smoother coat, some of these coats get dry, they get brittle, they get nasty, almost woolly. They'll retain dirt, but if you can smooth the cuticle, it'll repel the dirt. It'll stay tangle free for an extended period of time. It's all the same science, just different scenarios, added in. So if you can manage porosity and keep the coat smooth, extending manageability, shine, speed dry, static, de-shedding, body, less broken coat. I mean, what it enables you to do is take your water pressure from your nozzle of your sprayer or your dryer, and which would you rather utilize, wind and water to release shedding, or the snap, crackle, pop of tool damage, which Barbara talks about in her coach. You see that segue I did for Barbara?
Nice.
So,
ooh, that gets
but I mean, but I mean, snap, crackle, pop, breakage, coat damage. Combing is the number one cause of most hair breakage, and same thing in dogs. And what we're trying to do here is come up with mindful ways of minimizing that breakage. And you can do it by trusting your products, your liquid products. If your focus is on what they smell like, and if they're using whale sperm or some exotic, garbage claims ingredient, then you're missing the boat.
Now, why does everybody come on here and pick on my love for smells?
Smells are important.
For me, but not for any other reason.
Well, they are important, but we forget that the liquid products that we use in our profession, it's not about getting the dogs clean. Duh, they're going to get clean. It's pre-treating the coat with the proper products to get the desired finish effect that you want. And if it's shedding and you want to release a lot more shedding, you want to use products that have wonderful conditioning attributes. If you want to extend manageability, if you want to build body, if you want to get a wavy coat to lie flat, or a curly coat to hold its coat, it's all in the product that you use. But it's all related to the coat's porosity, and we tend to make things complicated in our industry. And all Beshot's been doing over the years is just been teaching, the whole idea of a 3-step system. It's nothing proprietary, but what it does is it puts right out there in the open in front of everyone's nose that there's a method that's effective in getting the results you want. And I'm just here to say that if you're following the right method, shedding becomes an easy thing.
It is.
It's a domino effect.
It's delightful. So how do you tell the difference between like normal shedding and what you would call excessive shedding? And even more important, I've always wondered if it's related to the seasons, or if it's related to a time period, or if it's related to hormones, or what actually instigates the shedding.
Well, first of all, it's a breed thing. There's a genetic code for every one of these breeds. I'll give you an example. Tracy and I, while my wife is a professional groomer of many, 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 many years, yesterday we went to the self-wash at the pet store because Banker, our Samoyed, was shedding something terrible. We're getting into the warm weather, so June 21 is coming up. Summer solstice, so he's shedding a lot of hair in that particular breed. He's going to hold on to a lot of it. Fortunately, a lot of these Nordic breeds and the Huskies and all these breeds that are synonymous with the word shedding, they're all what they refer to as a high porosity coat, meaning those cuticles lift open wider. And the good news is they're the easiest to manage because with a little conditioning, you can close those cuticles right up. Where the science and the research and the formulating comes in is how long can you keep those cuticles closed for manageability. You can't stop shedding. It ain't going to happen. You can manage shedding. And when I do my seminars I do a seminar called Shed Matters, and it's also a certifiable class for, I work with the folks at Whole Pet Grooming Academy. I'm an instructor there now.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I'm going to be doing some more classes there. But my point about shedding is it's just as much, how do I want to say, 50% of shedding is knowing how to release it and manage it. The other 50% is managing the expectation of the pet owner. Because when the pet owner comes to see you, they're coming to you because they're in pain. They've got hair everywhere. and the coat's getting matted. And if it's really neglected, then the coat gets pelted, and we know what happens to pelted coats festering underneath. All the skin problems that can occur. But when they come to you, if their expectation is that you're going to make it stop, they're going to be in for a rude awakening when they go home and the dog's still shedding to the lesser degree.
Or maybe even more because you've made everything so smooth that the rest of that hair is just dropping out. I always try to warn people.
If you understand how to manipulate the cuticle, you've actually created a little more work for yourself, because it's not a matter of just blowing out the excess. The trick is to extract as much as you can safely, and then you want to use products that'll keep that coat smooth for an extended period, so you don't get the buildup of shedding in the coat, so that it's easy to manage. And it's a combination, in my seminars I talk about different signage and things we can do to educate and enlighten people. Just how important it would be to have a mobile hanging up in your shop that's knowledge is shedding, and that shedding can't be stopped, but it can be managed, and getting that point across to the customer. Then a lot of them, there's people who think that when I go to the groomer, they make the dog shed more. That's not necessarily what's going on. It's so important that the customer learns. Anyway, I digress, but I spent a lot of time in my seminars coming up with creative ways of conveying knowledge and trying to teach the customer. You can't fix stupid and you can't help them all, but if you can get your point across to 30-40% of your clientele so they can work with you to better managing and getting ahead of the shedding cycle that happens every year, that's the trick. And from that, you can build value, you can better anticipate and plan in your busy shop, to accommodate the shedding. Like I said, 50% of it is managing expectations of the pet owner. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely.
And it's one of the hardest things.
Because the hair often gets trapped back there, the undercoat part of the hair coat, right? The undercoat hairs get trapped, and it's not time for the dog to be releasing the coat yet. And people think that, oh, my dog is just shedding like crazy. Well, they're not shedding. They're actually retaining it still. And that's a difficult part of managing the de-shedding, is when you're not actually able to get the hair out.
And then there's another variable. And the variable is some clever marketer comes up with their version of a tool, and they do a great ad, and the video of the tool shows all this hair coming out. And if you're a pet owner, oh, wouldn't that be great? But what they don't know is they're selling a product to a consumer who doesn't know the first thing about hair physiology, and that they end up doing more damage to the coat, and that creates other problems. I've seen dogs where the owners have taken all the, let's just use the term stripped with the tool, all the guard hair off, where all you see is this undercoat. Well, that's a problem, because you got these big white puffy fur balls where they're basically stripped away, broken, damaged all the guard hairs, and all you have is this undercoat underneath. People just don't understand. And at the same point, there's some tools. If you go to the Best Shot website, and then there's a company, what do they call, grooming something. They make posters of grooming and shedding. It'll come to me. I'm getting old. I can't remember everything. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
As you get older, that sound becomes more familiar. It comes out of both ends. But
I've got an English cream retriever, she says, using quotation marks, where the owner has been self-grooming the dog for the first year and a half of its life, and its guard hairs are like, I don't know, half an inch long, because she's taken them all off with a particular tool that you're referring to. We do usually name names here, but we'll just leave this one out of it.
We're not poo-pooing the tool. We're poo-pooing the misuse of the tool.
I've begged her not to use it, but she still uses it, and now she's wrecked the coat again this year. And doggone it, those guard hairs take a long time to replace.
Yes, they do. There's some really great articles that Jennifer Jacob Bissett, I saw one she wrote for the AKC, talking about the PDL and the UDL, the predetermined length, the genetically programmed hair, and the undetermined length. The guard hairs, many of them have a predetermined length. Some continue to grow. The undercoat usually has a determined coat length. It's only going to grow so much. And if you're taking off the guard hairs, you're really upsetting the system. There's no mindful understanding of the intelligent design of that particular breed's coat and how it was meant to function. They're just hacking away at it, and it can cause problems.
Well, I like to reference old growth forests. When you cut down an old growth forest, i.e. the guard hair, you cut down the old growth forest, the shrubbery grows much faster than everything else.
Yep.
And you'll have shrubbery, a completely different landscape for many, 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 many years, sometimes decades in the old growth forest. Same thing happens with the hair. You cut the guard hairs off and you've got an entirely different type of coat. You've got
harder to manage.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible, and yet it still happens. And
for the professional groomer, the thing that I try to pitch is for the majority of products that you're using. Most groomers are using products that they've heard about. You talk about Best Shot and Stasco and Show Season, and there's other brands out there, that you hear about. Okay, and these are all good brands. We need to trust the science. Trust that those products are going to do their job. They're going to moisturize. They're going to release coat. You put your trust in the science. We tend to forget and just think of them, we smell them, they smell great, or they don't like the smell, whatever. They stop there. They don't realize that that product, that conditioner, that spray and leave-in was designed with a purpose. And if you have some just very simple, basic understanding of hair porosity and hair physiology, one can navigate through their liquid grooming products much better and come up with methods that are more reliable. And if you've got the right methods, trust me, the good products stand out.
how about recirculators? They're pretty much the gift to the de-shedding market.
I think the recirculator, gets a little bit of a bad rap from people. People talk about you're using dirty water. And when I hear people say that, to me, that's a profiling question or response that tells me that the person doesn't understand how a shampoo works. Because a recirculator works like your clothes washer. If you put your beautiful white blouse and nice dress shirt in there along with your tidy whities that aren't so tidy, and you're like, whoa, wait a minute, you don't mix those two together. The surfactant keeps that dirt suspended in the water so it rinses away, and we forget that these are topical products. They're designed to work well. So recirculators are great, but where the real standout of a recirculator is with conditioners, because conditioners, being cationic, meaning that they bond to the hair and skin, the conditioner through a recirc, it's the best way of getting superior deposition of a conditioner all the way down to the skin. And you'll see hair come out in the bath. You'll be reaching underneath the pump, pulling all that hair out, because conditioners, yes, close cuticle scales. Anybody who knows me knows my thinking about this misleading concept of shampoos opening up the cuticle scales, which is not a true statement. We'll talk about that some other time. But conditioners definitely close cuticles. And basically a recirc becomes a de-shedding machine. And if 80% of our breeds are shedding, you really want to think about having one in your shop, at least for when you get those really terrible cases to deal with.
We use them for everything. I use a recirculator on every single dog for every single bath, with the exception of the medicated baths.
Yeah, with a mobile, it's a must because you have to conserve that water.
Yeah.
There isn't anything better out there. I'm going to do a shameless plug. Can I do a shameless plug?
Oh, yes. I'll have my ding ready.
You can grit your teeth. I used to poo-poo a lot of the metering systems.
The shampoo delivery systems?
Yeah, where they siphon up through the hose. But I got to tell you, and mind you, I spent 3 days at Groomer's Choice, and I was looking at their bather box. And the one thing I got to give them credit for is that there's no metering tips on that. And there's no dilution math. You dial that to preference. And I think that's actually a nice system where, for someone who doesn't have the water conserving issues that you would like with a mobile. So I got to give a shout out. I was really impressed with that system.
And there's no reason you can't use both if you really wanted to.
Exactly. There's a place for all these tools.
So many people don't measure their shampoo and waste a ton of shampoo, even in the recirculator. It's crazy.
Oh, let me tell you. I mean, I love when I was a couple years ago when I was tied up for 13 months going in and out of surgery. I had a lot of time to look at YouTube videos, and I would see these companies promoting their products. And I would shake my head because I'd see somebody with this white foaming shampoo coming out and they're pushing it in the coat and you're seeing all this shampoo and all the shedding releasing. And I'm like, no, the shampoo is going to do that. Apply it to the coat and then turn it off and let the fresh water do that. I see all this product going down the drain.
It's true.
Because people don't understand how to use the equipment. And unfortunately, metering systems, if you don't know what you're doing, you can deplete a gallon of shampoo pretty quickly. And busy shops that have bought them have seen their consumption go up 20, 30%. And that's not the product's fault. That's the user's fault for not understanding physiology and how to use the product. And it's nothing complicated.
It's a learning curve.
There's a learning curve, but some people never learn. And it starts with our industry and us talking about it, and seminars and education. I mean, 99% of us are, if not more, are wasting our shampoo.
I do some product testing sometimes for Michael and also when we talk about it on the show. And one of our listeners emailed me privately and said, how much shampoo do you use? And I said, probably 2 ounces, maybe 2.5 ounces. I use a half an ounce of shampoo. I measured. I don't have to use hardly any shampoo, and I get great results. I don't have any problems with my dogs.
And you don't need to see suds or foam either.
I was just going to mention that. It's like we're 2 peas in a pod here. The fact that Best Shot mindfully formulates their shampoos to not be as foamy and actually has shampoos that are specifically made for the recirculator is such a benefit to all of us. So I just love that you guys do that. It's really helpful.
Yeah. I was looking at our facial washes tend to be very foamy because that's what people want. And I'm thinking, that one still bothers me, because I think it foams too much. But compared to other products, people are okay with that.
It smells nice.
Yeah, it smells good. And then you got frothing and all these other things out there that people are doing. And
yeah, we've been trying to enlighten people that if your surfactant is holding onto an air bubble, it's not capturing dirt.
Yeah, I mean, am I poo-poo against suds in a professional capacity? I think we use far too many suds. Am I poo-pooing frothing? No, I don't have any problem with the method. I just have a problem with the claims where people say that it cleans better, and there's nothing supporting that. But if frothing, for example, if you go through all the steps in frothing, people who froth tend to use conditioners for the first time. So the results that they're seeing are largely due to the benefits of the conditioners. But if frothing slows you down to be mindful and pace yourself, where you're not just mindlessly putting the dog in the tub and getting it out, then there's something there.
There's also a benefit to using a diluted product on the face, and frothing definitely dilutes the product. So that's another place where it's useful. So I'm not saying never froth.
But just understand what it is, know the reasons, the facts behind what it is you're using. Critical thinking is a thing that I know at the whole Pet Grooming Academy, I recently was talking with them and they were reviewing the company's mission, and critical thinking is such an important thing, not only in today's education, but in our industry as well.
And life.
To be able to assess things and make up your mind and don't just accept things at face value. Be in the now, understand the science. Critical thinking is important anyway.
We're all about that here on the GroomPod, better living through science, and you guys certainly help us with that.
Thank you.
Where do you see Best Shot going in the future? What do you have planned? Anything exciting that we might want to know about? Different fragrances, says the girl who loves smells.
We've got 21 fragrances that we offer in our Sentiment Spa line. It seems like we're like trying to get the Baskin Robbins 31. I don't know what it is. We keep coming out with fragrances, but I would like to see us take our Agree scent, which is what we use in our Dirty Dog, and offer that in the cologne because people really seem to like the musk. botanical musk fragrance in there. So that's something we've been thinking about.
Barbara loves that.
Yeah, we've been talking a while about maybe beefing up our topical spray, which is in our MED wellness line. We have a traditional, just a topical spray for the skin, and we're thinking maybe of enhancing it, improving it with a little chlorhexagluconate. We've been talking about that for a while. We've been talking a while about introducing a chlorhex conditioner. It seems like life and things get in the way, COVID and other, supply chain, things like that. But that's something we're looking at kind of repositioning and readdressing our MED line, not changing the shampoo formulations.
Good.
But, expanding it a little bit. I'm still going back and forth on, toying with the idea, and I'd be curious to hear your feedback on a scent-free. I'm not, hypoallergenic gets pitched for the wrong reasons. Like I know in our Sentiment Spa line, we pitch hypoallergenic fragrances. That's a thing. But people got this idea that if you call something hypoallergenic, it has no fragrance and no color, totally ignoring the fact that the colors are so highly regulated that the color isn't so much the problem. No one's using any colors that are harmful today. If it says FTC in front of them, that means it's highly regulated and tested. But there is something to be said about fragrance-free.
I agree. I think that would be a great idea.
It's just where to put it and give a just, because when you do introduce a product, it's not a matter of just coming out with it and you're done. You have to get behind it for about 3 or 4 years and really push it and promote it.
Without knowing off the top of my head what is in the Ultra Wash 2, the one that's formulated for the recirculator, maybe a fragrance-free that.
That could be.
Yeah, that would be my suggestion for that. But I'm just a groomer.
Yeah.
I'm not Barbara. I have, through osmosis, absorbed a lot of her information, but I don't have the technical wherewithal. That's where I would go. I would do it with an everyday shampoo, possibly one that really dilutes well and is good in the recirculator but has zero fragrance, because oftentimes it's not an allergy thing. It is just a fragrance thing.
Right, it's a preference thing. And then in a professional application, we're using different products, and I'm going to be honest, not everybody's using exclusively one brand when they're doing their shampooing, conditioning, and spray. That's just a human thing. So there is merit to having fragrance-free. So a lot to think about. We're kind of slow. We don't really like to jump into things because, you make a commitment and the last thing you want to do is have a dud. I'll give you an example. You've heard me say before, like when we introduced the Max, I had that sitting on a shelf for the longest time thinking about how to introduce it. And I did a lot of testing. And when I finally came out with the label, I said one little 8.5 ounce bottle makes 20 pints, only to find out it made more like 40 pints. That's a good problem. Sometimes that can flip the other way. Forgive me if we're a little slow and not rushing to jump on the latest thing. Brings up another point, though. One of the frustrating things I see in our industry, and it's not a harsh criticism, it's just an observation, is a couple things. Number one, recently I was talking to somebody and they were upset because they were claiming they couldn't get a product through a distributor. They wanted to get a better deal because they assume if they buy it direct that they're going to get a better deal, which is not necessarily the case, because if I make shampoo and we make like over 100 different items that we offer, when you look at all the sizes, but then if you find a distributor, they're selling 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 items. So they're shipping hundreds of products a day, right? They can negotiate better shipping rates, cheap, they can spend $99, get free shipping, and that's something that I was just looking at. Again, I think it falls under critical thinking. People just assume that a manufacturer is going to be the best option. And then along that thinking, when I was talking to somebody, they were looking for a better price and they said they buy a year's supply. And I'm thinking, why would you buy a year's supply of product? This is water-based product.
Hang on. I'm going to take a break because that leads me into my last question for you.
Okay.
Hey, Chris Bear Anthony here. You may know I've been swiveling for years now with my beloved Evolution shears, but I wasn't actually born with a pair of swivel shears in my hands. Check out our website and Facebook page for our library of how-to videos, or give me a shout for a personalized guide. Your hands will thank you. Don't forget, GroomPod listeners get $10 off and free shipping with the code GroomPod. What are you waiting for? Give them a try today.
Sometimes my clients don't like a walking air freshener. When these crazy people request a scent-free option, I go right to Show Season.
Show Season True Tearless Shampoo and Hypo Conditioner fit the bill. They are totally fragrance-free and yet hold up on their own as good products. True Tearless has been expertly formulated to be gentle to the eyes, skin, and hair while maintaining good cleaning power. Hypo Conditioner is a great option as well, and it's one of our favorite conditioners with or without fragrance. So let's get fragrance-free. Use True Tearless and Hypo Conditioner from Show Season today.
Go to showseasongrooming.com.
And we're back.
Let's see what's happening at the grooming table. Talking about water-based products and spoilage, and especially specifically the pump situation. The pump thing drives me crazy. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Well, somewhere along the line, we all got stupid. When you go to the grocery store and you pick up your groceries, we've learned that there's certain items that you hurry up and you get them in the refrigerator. And then you learn that while the pickle jar says it has a 3-year expiration date, open or not, it can spoil well before that date. Same thing with your milk. Best if used by. And those of you that are beer drinkers know that you don't want to let beer sit because it gets funky. But we forget the fact that shampoos are water-based. Water fosters bacteria. I had somebody tell me, well, it has a 2-year expiration date. I'm going to buy a 1-year supply. That's the dumbest thing you can do because, forgive me, but expiration date doesn't tell you squat.
Right.
Because there's some other variables affecting it. Heat. When you do open it, even if you don't open it, so many things that can happen. Years ago, I sold somebody a ton of product. I was all excited. I got a big order out of this one little groomer, only to find out that year's supply of product they stored in a shed in the back of their yard. So needless to say, they weren't happy when I felt I needed to replace something, but I didn't replace everything that they lost. Shame on me. And they weren't happy about that, and they learned the hard way, as did I, that we need to talk about and be real about the liquid products. In the medical field, plasmas, medicines, vaccines, whatnot, they have a protocol. Yeah, they got to be stored a certain way. There's a way they're dispensed. You got to care for them because they can go bad. Plus, people's lives are on the line. You don't want things getting contaminated. Well, where's these protocols for shampoo? And I had somebody say, it's a shampoo. How can it go bad? It cleans. How can it go bad? Because they don't know what they don't know. And then you get a company like Best Shot. Occasionally I hear somebody say, oh, well, the Best Shot, spoils a lot more than other products. And there's some truth to that. There is some truth to that. And that's because we tend to use a lot of proteins and a lot of active ingredients, which makes them more susceptible. But when you have an industry where so many people it never occurred to them, the care that's required of them, the accountability that's required by them as a professional to take care of these liquids. Because let's be honest, a groom shop is not a clean room by any means. There's bacteria, mold, and anybody who knows what I say when I talk about a clean room, you see those sci-fi movies where the viruses are going and they got all the plastic and whatnot, or they even have special rooms for computers,
The chip manufacturers have a room you go in where it blows you off and checks your shoes.
We do not live in that environment. There's so many things that can happen, and I'm not trying to do fear marketing. I'm just trying to be real. And anything that happens in the majority of product spoilage that occurs usually happens on the end of the groomer. From time to time, manufacturers get stuff out of spec, which there's this famous thing where people say, oh, you must have had a bad batch. And they automatically jump to that conclusion without acknowledging that they've got these gallons of shampoo with an open pump. Open pump, open bottle. If we were to take some of the science, and look at these infrared and temperature videos of a room, how hot it gets in a grooming room, you would see the airflow and the moisture suck through that thing and go inside the bottle. And as you deplete, that bottle's level drops down to half to a third, you've got all that now open surface area within that bottle that's going to build up with condensation. And condensation fosters bacteria. And the amount of bacteria you're going to get in there is going to overcome what remaining preservative is in that gallon. Preservatives only do so much. It's not paint. It's not some inert mineral-based product. It's going to spoil. Even a silicone, a liquid silicone, while it may not go bad, it can get contaminated and become a carrier of bacteria if we're not mindful. So these are things we need to talk about. But to your point about the pumps, I think the problem is we tend to put these pumps on and we'll put them on a product that we don't use as much. Well, if that product doesn't get used much and you're in a shop and you've had it for 2 months, you'd be surprised. And long before you start to smell that sulfur, the product's going bad. It doesn't have to smell bad to be teeming with bacteria. Now, the good news is these are rinse-off products. So if there is some bacteria in there, they can still clean. The problem is if you got a dog with open lesions or whatever, now you're going to have a problem. We might be skating by and getting lucky a lot of times, the products that we use, but we really need to step up our game and be more mindful and try to employ safer methods of dispensing and storing our products. And let's be honest, shampoo is probably one of our biggest expenses. So we really need to take greater care. If you wish to add to that.
I would, because oftentimes I'll go visiting other groom shops or picking up dryers to repair or something like that. I walk back into the bathing area and there's 8 gallons of shampoo underneath the bathtub with no lids on it.
Oh, come now. Who is that? No, you can't
I've seen it. I swear I've seen it.
But that gallon has a preservative in it. How can that go bad? Oh, come on. So when my dog gets itchy and I get hit with that $600 bill, I'm going to call up the manufacturer because it must have been a bad batch.
It's crazy. I talk to people about it when I see it because it's so bad. It's just so bad. It's hot there.
Yeah.
Hot and extra moisture and no lid. And it just fascinates me.
And see, I've learned not to come across as the condescending dick manufacturer. I can say that, can I?
Yes, here, absolutely.
No, people honestly don't know. They don't know what they don't know. Once you can explain it to them, and see, the problem is sometimes for the manufacturer, people are expecting pushback, like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. So I'm going to tell you. And they're hoping that they can get their money back for the spoiled product or that the manufacturer is going to pay for the itchy dog that left. Because God knows that only a shampoo can make that dog itchy and rub itself all over the furniture. Nothing else. There was no pre-existing condition. We forget. See, just like we forget about spoilage, we forget that this is a business and there's risks associated. And unfortunately, this is why you need to be insured because it's where the accountability falls. People don't know. So I did an article a few years back and I've been pushing it. People still see I popped the article on, share links to it. And I've done seminars and I've been talking to my distributors and we're trying to get the word out because in the old days, we never talked about this. And every time a good customer groomer would have a problem, the first thing the manufacturer would do would be like, oh, geez, why is this happening? Oh, look, they're a good customer. We need to take care of them. And they go and they give product and all they're doing is enabling. They're not addressing the problem.
It's like giving a dog a cookie for being bad.
Well, oh, God, I just saw that happen the other day. But at any rate, the dog was barking and the person stood there in front of us and gave the dog a cookie. And my wife and I just bit our tongue until the person left because we've made the mistake of trying to educate people. But anyway, so these are the challenges and what we're encouraging through venues like this. And we just need to talk about this like we're doing and share this information with other people. It starts there. Best
practices. Where do you store your shampoo?
The cooler, the better. The cooler, the better. Then there's always the person, well, what temperature? You know what? If you give a temperature, then that cripples people.
Put it in your root cellar.
Yeah, don't put it in your trailer. I had somebody, a mobile groomer. Well, I'm a mobile, and I've had a problem with best shot spoiling. Okay, well, the first question I have, do you leave your shampoo on board? Susie, you know that can exhaust a shampoo.
Absolutely.
So most people have smaller bottles, maybe a milk crate or a carry bag, and they bring it in and out with them every day because you learn. Just it is what it is. Yeah, the cooler, the better. If you have pumps, don't mingle them. Don't use a pump on a product that you don't use often.
How about close those darn pumps off? They have a locking mechanism.
There's some pumps that they sell little rubber caps that you can put on the nozzles. The more you can do, the better. That's really about all you can say, and there's always clever people coming up with ingenious ways of managing and keeping things clean, and for everybody it's different. But the assumption, I think, is, you think of that bottle of shampoo in your shower until you realize, especially if you have a big family, some of those bottles have been opened and then you go to use it and it smells nasty. But we can't do that in our business because suddenly we're going to have bigger problems. And the idea is to reduce the likelihood of these things and just to be mindful. It's not really complicated. It's common sense, but it does take work. And the better you are at keeping house, good housekeeping, being clean and measuring and things like that, you're going to be more successful. And that acknowledges that some of us are more skilled at that than others. And if you're one of those people who aren't, then just be aware that you're going to have some challenges that you got to deal with. But that's the fact. Pulling the Band-Aid off, it all goes bad. And I love when people say, well, Best Shot spoils faster than the other stuff. And then they'll tell me what they're using. And they're not, mind you, they're not telling me Quadruped or Show Season. They're telling me some obscure brand that is very basic and there's not a lot in there, which that too can spoil, but it's probably going to last longer. But do you want to be using that quality of a product as a professional? It's a balance. You get what you pay for. You got to take care of your stuff and know what you're using.
I'll give you one last tip for storing your shampoo. And in the area where I store my shampoo, and Barbara would roll her eyes at me because I'm kind of anal retentive in some of this stuff, I have a Sharpie on a string attached to my shampoo rack. And when I get new shampoo, I write on the bottle when the shampoo arrived at my place. And occasionally I'll write when I've opened it, just in case it's going to sit around for a while, so that I know both when it came and when I opened it, because I don't know how long it sat at the distributor. I don't know how long it sat at your place before it got sent to the distributor, before then it got to my place. So the way to do it, and I rotate. I'm a big rotator. So if I've got something that's becoming old or aged, I will move it forward in the rack so I know I've got to focus on getting rid of that.
That's so important because many aspects of the grooming industry are predictable. For that very same reason that you do that, think about our dryers that we use. When you buy a new dryer, we should put a little card on there with the date you bought it and write a date on there. Talk to the manufacturer if you need to. Write a date on there where you know that regardless, you're going to take that out of service and you're going to get its carbon brushes replaced before they go bad. Have a backup dryer if you need one.
I'm a backup everything. I have a backup everything. I'm like the Costco of backups. I have I have 3 bathing systems now. I've got 2 clipper vacs. I have 2 HV dryers. I only have 1 lip system and 1 trailer, but I do have 2 tow vehicles and I have 2 generators. So I've got duplicates of everything.
Well, and it comes from experience. Most experienced people are experienced at failing, and the trick is to not fail again, or at least not fail at that particular thing again. And that's the name of the game.
Yeah. Well, Dave, I'm going to thank you just profusely for coming out and hanging on. And even a bigger thank you for being the primary sponsor of the podcast. I mean, I love that you guys have been there for us from the beginning, and hopefully till we decide we don't want to do it anymore, which will probably never happen until I die.
We want to do more with you, and we share you with everybody we talk to.
Oh, and there's that. Every time you speak somewhere, we get a bump. There isn't a week goes by that I'm not adding at least 7 more people to the Facebook group. But when you talk about us and when you put that slide up, we always get a really nice Best Shot Dave Campanella bump. So I appreciate that too. All right, guys, thanks for being here. Remember, look forward to our new webinars that will be coming up that are exclusively from the GroomPod and will support Barbara